Right now, some angels are already locked up in chains. Not after Judgment Day, not in hell. The Bible says God cast them into a supernatural prison called Tartarus, where they're being held for crimes committed against us. So what is Tartarus, and why would God send some angels there before the end of time? I've put together 6 evidence cards to help us piece together this mystery. But first, here's exactly where this comes from in the Bible, only the English translation hides something, but we're about to uncover it. 2 Peter 2:4 says, "For if God did not spare the angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until judgment." Our first evidence card will reveal the translation mistake in this verse. Evidence card number 1. The original language doesn't say God sent the angels to hell. It says he sent them to Tartarus, a place in ancient Greek thought, the deepest, darkest part of the underworld. That definition comes from Logos Bible software. According to some scholars, like Justin Bass, Tartarus and hell are not the same place. Translators made a mistake here. What we have here is a supernatural prison buried deep below Hades or Sheol. Tartarus doesn't even seem to be hell at all. Hell is a different place for final judgment, but this place is a dark, fiery holding chamber, a maximum security prison where the worst offenders are locked away before judgment. Some ancient copies of Peter's letter call it the pit. This place was never made for humans. It was meant for angels who rebelled. But here's the surprise. The name of this place, Tartarus, comes from Greek stories written centuries before the New Testament. You've probably even heard of one, Homer's Iliad. And the earliest mention of Tartarus actually comes from Hesiod's Theogony around the 8th century BCE. Theogony says Tartarus was so far down, it would take a falling object 9 full days to reach it. So why would the Bible reference stories from ancient Greece? Most likely, the writers were making a very specific point. Let's see if we can figure out what it is. In Book 8 of the Iliad, Zeus warns the other gods not to interfere in the Trojan War. He says if they defy him, he'll grab them and hurl them into Tartarus, a pit as far below Hades as heaven is above the earth. Now, Peter's not saying he believes Zeus is real. He sees a familiar concept that will help him make his point. So Peter grabs that term and says, hey, you know that scary prison for spiritual criminals? The real God also imprisoned spiritual rebels. But those gods weren't Greek gods. They were angels who corrupted humanity and tried to sabotage God's plans. The Greeks thought Tartarus was deep in the earth, but the Bible never says that. While it may call it the pit, I think the point is actually it's as far away from heaven as you can possibly get. It's like the Alcatraz of the spiritual realm. These angels will not be able to escape. But what crime did they commit? Let's flip over card number 2. It says, from Jude 6 and 7, angels left their natural habitat and sinned sexually. Really? Let's take a look. Jude 6 in the ESV says, and the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling, he has kept in eternal chains, under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. Notice that for this prison, Jude used the same description that Peter used when describing Tartarus, a gloomy pit of darkness. It seems they're both describing the same event, but their crime is going to blow your mind. Jude's comments about angels leaving their proper dwelling hides a secret. On the surface, it means these angels left the spiritual realm where they belong, but dwelling is a loaded term. So let's check out card number 3. The Greek word Jude used for dwelling was also used by Paul to refer to the body we'll receive in heaven after God has resurrected us, from 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 2. This is a subtle hint that the angels didn't just leave heaven, but maybe tried to somehow inhabit a human body. Jude made a comparison that confirms their crime. Verse 7 says, "Just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which likewise indulged in sexual immorality and pursued unnatural desire, serve as an example by undergoing a punishment of eternal fire." Our investigation's about to get really interesting. The link to Sodom and Gomorrah may not be what you think. Notice the passage says they pursued unnatural desire. Card number 4 is going to give us another clue as to what this means. According to a footnote in the English Standard Translation, a more accurate translation would be this: they pursued different flesh. Sometimes I can't believe people think the Bible's boring. I have a feeling this story is about to get R-rated, but I'm going to be as sensitive as I can. In Genesis 19, the Sodom and Gomorrah story, 2 angels visit a man named Lot in his home. But then a violent mob comes to the door of Lot's house, and they demand Lot send the men outside so that they may know them. It's a euphemism for sex. If you've been paying close attention to this story, then you would know that Lot's company wasn't human. The mob that surrounded the house, they wanted to rape the 2 angels. This gives a whole new meaning to the phrase pursuing different flesh. A light way of saying it is they tried to cross the species barrier. But in the story Jude and Peter are referencing, angels and humans reversed roles. It was the angels who pursued different flesh. Jude doesn't spell it out directly, but he definitely implies that the angels crossed the species barrier. He compares their sin to Sodom and Gomorrah, who also pursued different flesh. But that wasn't their only crime. Their other dirty deed is kind of difficult to spot, at least at first. So let's back up to 2 Peter chapter 2. When Peter mentions the angels in prison, it seems out of place, at least at first. But he's been writing about false teachers and false prophets, warning of how they exploit others with false teachings. And then he mentions the angels in Tartarus. It's not random. There was another famous story circulating where angels appeared as false teachers. Their motives were evil, so they taught us forbidden secrets, like the art of war, the art of seduction for the purpose of deception, sorcery. It's an extra-biblical story from the book of Enoch, and it fills in some details on how angels corrupted humanity before the flood. Whether or not all of Enoch is true, we don't know. But based on the context, Peter seems to agree that the angels in Tartarus had appeared to humans as false teachers. So now we know the crimes. Angels crossed the species barrier and taught teachings that corrupted them. And there's one place in the Bible where those 2 crimes converge in a single story. And the moment of the crime is Genesis 6, 1 through 4. It says the angels, called the sons of God, took human wives, producing children. See for yourself. Starting in verse 2, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, "My spirit shall not abide in man forever, so he is flesh, his days shall be 120 years." The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. Honestly, this interpretation of this passage makes a lot of people very uncomfortable, which is totally understandable. But our final card is going to reveal a way to make sense out of this. Before we see what's on the final evidence card, this t-shirt I'm wearing was made by Arise Apparel, who sponsored this video, And they have some really unique Christian t-shirts. This is the Bible prophecy t-shirt from Daniel 7. They also have a really cool Jesus t-shirt made to look like the Coca-Cola logo. So check out their store at ariseapparel.com. And now for our final piece of evidence. Who else left heaven to take on an earthly dwelling or body? The final card says, Jude structured his letter to contrast this point. Fallen angels took on flesh to destroy us, but Jesus took on flesh to save us. Now, to clarify, the angels who committed the crime didn't directly become human. It was believed that their children were half human, the infamous giants called Nephilim, from which later the giant Goliath would emerge. So even though this stuff sounds really strange, it makes sense when you realize it was all an attempt by the fallen angels to sabotage God's plan, and that means a couple things. These rebel angels don't want God to remake the world into a better one. They want it to stay like this or worse. And two, some of these fallen angels don't want us to be saved. Stopping God is an impossible task, literally. It cannot be done. But if some angels were to try, it would require some desperate measures. So through that lens, this story about rebel angels making half-human, half-divine giants, it starts to make a little bit more sense. I mean, we are reading a book about a supernatural story after all. So between these giants and the false teachings, our world became so violent that only a flood could save us. But the flood wasn't a perfect reset. It didn't fix everything. And the solution would begin with another even more stunning supernatural birth, Jesus. All right, guys, the interpretation I shared of Genesis 6 is hotly debated. So do you find it difficult or easy to accept? I want to know in the comments, so let's talk about it. But did you know this passage about angels and giants is a warning? And it had something to do with Babylon's ancient fishmen. What is going on in this scene? Watch this video next to find out.